Welcome to the Jenna Banks Show. I'm your host, Jenna Banks, and I'm all about helping you with tips, tools, and expert advice to help you live life to your fullest potential. My guest today, his name is D. Grant Smith. And today we're going to deviate from the typical format that I usually do my shows in, where we rally around one particular topic. D and I talk about a few different things. Codependency is definitely a central theme. But we also get into self-love, which is a subject he and I both get really deep into just in our professional lives as well as our personal lives. And then also we talk about what it's like to be on your spiritual journey at certain parts and points in your spiritual journey. It just so happens that D, while recording today, is in a particular point in his spiritual journey, and that we found it very interesting to talk about today on the show. And so we dive into that topic as well. So it's those three things. So if any or all of them intrigue you, I invite you to stay tuned because the discussion is very real and very vulnerable. So D. Grant was once upon a time a radio show host for quite some time. He even put a book out on it. And today he is an author, a speaker, and a teacher. And he teaches us what love really is so we can give it fully to ourselves and bring healing and wholeness to relationships to transform the world. So he does this through his blog, his writing, his podcast, his courses, and his coaching. And he also wrote a book called Be Solid: How to Go Through Hell and Come Out Whole. D, happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Well, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm always excited to talk to people that care about the same things that I care about and want to serve people in similar ways as well. And you have such a very big, beautiful, loving heart, and your desire to help people grow is such a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you so much, D. And you have exactly the same. I feel like you and I are on a very similar mission to help people on their self-love journey and realize that really it all comes down to how loving yourself, how important that is, and really making that pivot, I think has been our common journey, is pivoting from, seeking love externally in all kinds of different things and realize that, ultimately it's within, and it's not as simple as turning on a light switch, right?
Understatement of the century.
Yeah. So you were saying before we got on that you're currently in the middle of a process along your journey. And I'd love to kind of continue on that conversation because I think it's something that I don't know if I've ever heard talked about before. And once I realized it, I kind of had to figure it out on my own what it was. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about where you are today?
Well, just to be super clear, I have a very novice understanding of this process as well. And this is something that I'm learning about in process and growing in. One of the cool things, and I think your viewers and listeners will relate, at least hopefully so. And if you don't relate to this, you're now connected to two people that will help you go through this process.
Yeah.
But as we journey from one state of being or consciousness, for lack of a better term, or one state of living into another state, whether that's going from glory to glory or going from rock bottom to whatever the next step up after that is, you will attract people into your life that will help you along that journey and provide for you wisdom and insights and tools and guidance and even just a hand to be held and a shoulder to cry on as you go through that process. We don't do anything alone unless we choose to. And with that in mind, I highly advise, obviously, be careful and aware of the people that you surround yourself with at every stage in your life.
So true. So true.
I'll talk about this a little bit as we get into the discussion because it's been a part of my journey. But going through, I would consider my experience to be lower than rock bottom. Because of the brokenness that I felt. And I think some people can relate to that because maybe we all experience different levels of rock bottom in our journeys.
We do, yes.
But when you get hit with crushing agonizing heartbreak that hits you in your deepest, worst, most like profound fears all at the same time. For me, that was a level that was like, okay, we took one of those giant drilling rigs that they attach to the stuff that goes and finds oil, like
Yeah.
several miles into the ground, and just dug straight through rock bottom and then dropped my, happy little or unhappy little butt there.
Oh,
But the reason I'm saying all this is at every step along the way, especially in the growth and transition process, as you're becoming a better version of yourself and becoming a better version of yourself, be very aware of the people you surround yourself with and the energies that you're attracting in, because that has a profound effect on your ability to move forward. So, with that in mind, where I'm at in my journey, I've been doing a lot of spiritual growth, is I guess the easiest way to say it.
sure.
And just to be clear, I'm spiritual is talking about God and the universe and all that stuff, but it's also talking about what goes on inside of you that you can't see.
Right, your soul, that energy field. Yeah.
So my interpretation and perspective is, if I can't see it and hold it and touch it with my hands, or taste it or whatever with my five senses, that's a spiritual aspect. So one of the teachers that I read a whole lot and listen to a whole lot of his stuff, and he's no longer in the same body, I guess, in a physical sense. I don't necessarily understand reincarnation, but if that's true, I guess that could happen. But anyways, his name's Neville Goddard, and he teaches that God is your imagination, that all of us are a part of a collective consciousness that makes up what is God. And that goes against all of the religious programming that I had as a child and a
Mine
young
too.
adult and
Yeah.
everything. But in my past life, I would have rejected that because it went against the dogma. But part of the upgrade of consciousness and the leveling up of spirit and soul is, let's be open to possibilities. So I have been in this journey of upgrading my consciousness, which is the thoughts and beliefs that I have on a regular basis. What I believe to be true about myself, what I believe to be true about other people, what I believe to be true about God, what I believe to be true about the world, and shifting away from ultimately a scarcity, lack, poverty consciousness,
Yep.
and into a prosperity, abundance consciousness. So like you said a minute ago, Jenna, we want to be able to flip a switch and everything just shift automatically, and it be easy and fluid and natural, and we don't have to do any work.
Right.
Well, I don't know anybody that's had that experience.
I don't either. It hasn't been my experience at all. And where you are in your journey right now, I was so there a handful of months ago. Oh, so there. So I get it. But maybe you can explain it to us. Like what is it that you're like experiencing right now in this part of your journey?
Well, here's what I understand from, and again, I've attracted people into my life by talking about this stuff that know more, have more experience, have been through some of the same things, and are giving me insights and clarity and guidance on what this actually is, which is all very valuable. Because when you feel like you're alone, and when you're feeling all this crazy mix of emotions, it doesn't make any sense and is heavy.
Yeah.
It feels isolating. So, what I understand about where I am in my journey, and maybe this is something that you can relate to, and maybe this is something that your audience can relate to. I think maybe it likely is. I have a very big heart. I love to love and I love to give. Overgiving is not a strength. It's actually something that works against you. So I've been learning about how to draw healthy boundaries for myself. I've also been learning about what it means to have a big heart and what it means to love, and getting into the codependency stuff. A lot of people that have really big hearts and are naturally giving individuals will overgive, overserve, overseek in the hopes of doing a couple things. One, proving their worth to themselves and other people.
Right.
Two, hoping that the love that they really want will be given back to them if they give enough of it in exchange. It becomes a transactional relationship.
It does. Yep.
And three, to have some sort of sense of purpose and fulfillment. Because serving is ultimately our purpose, but when you serve from a need versus serving from a desire, you get a different outcome.
So true.
So, where I am in my journey is I spent a lot of years, 3.5 decades worth at least, seeking after, chasing after, searching for validation, acceptance, and approval. And also feeling like I had to earn everything that came into my life that was good. Again, that's not just love and happiness, that's also money and a feeling of purpose, fulfillment, all this other stuff. So, what has been happening to me as I've been going through this transformational consciousness shift is changing all the beliefs and letting go of so much ego stuff that I've taken on a new consciousness. Now, as I take on the spiritual consciousness, my body, which has been holding on to memories and histories of my experiences, has been holding on to all this stuff, and releasing that energetically means that there's a clearing out process. When I delete files on my computer, I don't get to see what my computer actually goes through as it's releasing and permanently deleting all this stuff that I've held on to for forever.
Wow. So true. So true. And I don't think, see, you're conscious of what you're feeling right now. And I wonder if those listening or watching right now have had a similar experience, but maybe didn't even recognize it for what it was. And I can say I probably was one of those people for a long time until I had the opportunity to really go deep into it. And this was not that long ago. Last year, really, when I went through a massive transformation spiritually. And I was such a fortunate person to have the ability to have time. And I have a feeling you might be in a similar situation as me. And it's a luxury that, unfortunately, in this society, most of us never get that. We're working 9 to 5 or 10, 12-hour jobs 5 days a week. And by the time the weekend comes along, you're, self-medicating to relax, or you're parking yourself in front of a television or hanging out with friends. Distraction. When do you ever really have the time to just be for extended periods of time?
Or even know how to do that.
Right.
I mean, part of this is something that the love of my life and I are working on and talk about a lot, is re-regulating your nervous system.
I think Joe Dispenza
talks about this a whole lot. Recalibrating and rebalancing, reworking your nervous system. And that, especially when you've been through trauma in your life, and all of us have,
right,
our nervous system goes through that, not just our hearts and our feelings and our emotions, but like all the inner workings of your system experiences that stuff. And when your nervous system is out of alignment or out of balance, that's when not only do you experience all kinds of crazy things, but also you attract all kinds of crazy things.
Oh my gosh, you are so true. So dead on there, D.
So all of this stuff is really heavy, and it's really hard, and it's really mysterious because we can't put our eyes on it.
Right.
And we can't put our hands on it, and we can't ask it. Well, actually, we can't ask it questions. That's something that I've been learning how to do.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of your emotions are teachers for you. They're all on your team, even if they don't feel like they are.
Right.
There's a beautiful movie. It's made for kids, but I think every human being needs to watch it. It's called Inside Out. It's a Pixar movie.
Okay.
And inside this movie, the whole movie is basically about 5 emotions of this little girl, but you also see they're the 5 basic emotions of all the other people in her life. And they all have little character deals. But and it's interesting, the 5 core emotions, their job is to make the little girl happy. That's their purpose.
Okay.
But only one of the emotions would you ever associate with happiness. Okay, so the 5 core emotions are joy, anger, sadness, fear, and disgust.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so on the surface, that doesn't seem to be a movie about a little girl's happiness.
No.
But here's the really powerful thing. This is why I encourage everybody to watch it. When you watch this movie, you see how integral and deep and necessary these seemingly negative emotions are in your actual well-being.
Okay, do tell. Maybe you can expand on one of those a
Okay,
bit.
well, in particular, and without giving away the ending of the movie or how the storyline plays out, two of the emotions get sucked out of their little emotional chamber, and they're on their own with all the other emotions and all the imaginings and all kinds of things that are going on inside this little girl's mind. All this stuff is in her mind.
Okay.
The two emotions that get out are joy and sadness. And sadness is always, Debbie Downer, everything's, terrible, and she's, and joy is always like trying to, bring happiness and cheer and all this stuff to whatever it is that's going on. And joy rejects sadness for a period of time until she finally has an awakening where she experiences a memory that it required sadness to be there in order for people to come into her life and to cheer her up and actually make her feel like she was on top of the world. And when I saw that, it's towards the end of the movie, but when I saw that happen, it helped me say, I have been rejecting my own sadness.
Right.
I've been rejecting my own anger. I've been suppressing these emotions and holding them somewhere inside of me, not letting them come out because I was afraid what would happen when they did. And so part of my spiritual journey has been 3 of my core emotions coming to the surface and not letting me ignore them anymore. Those 3 emotions were anger, sadness, and bitterness.
Okay.
And so I, in a spiritual kind of imagination sort of place, imagine myself sitting behind roughly like a CEO's desk, and 3 chairs were in front of me. And in each one of those chairs was one of those emotions. And each one of them told me the exact same thing. They said, we are a part of you. We are a part of your life. We deserve to have a place at the table. You will not keep us silent anymore. We want to be heard. And I said, okay, please forgive me for silencing you. Here's the thing, though. I will give you as much expression as you want to have, and you can communicate everything that you want to communicate, but I still have veto power on what I decide to do with what you tell me.
That's good. Yeah. 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 You can't, well, so it comes down to not letting you are not your emotion. It's a part of your experience, but it does not control you. And I think that's what a lot of people get wrong, is that the emotion is them, just like we think our thoughts are us. It's not the case at all. These are just feelings we're having and thoughts that are running through our heads. What we are is the energy behind it. We're the observer or the witness of these things. That's where we find our true self. But these emotions and thoughts are things that are part of our experience, and it's energy that needs to run its course. And, my experience last year with this was pretty intense. It feels like energy wise, something similar to what you're going through right now. I don't know if I would have been bold enough to go on camera during that phase, just because it was so foreign to me to sit in it like I was and embrace it like I was and like you're doing now. But, it really helped me to open Eckhart Tolle's book, Power of Now, during that process.
Yeah.
And I just, thankfully, I've read a bunch of spiritual texts, and my instinct was drawing me to that one. And specifically, I recalled the last time I had read it, him talking about, these energy blocks that we have, and the process to releasing those energy blocks. But it was all conceptual to me at the time. But now I was feeling this energy running through my body, and I couldn't, I could tell. And again, I remembered some of his texts, which said something to the effect of, your body wants to attach a story to it, or maybe even a current emotion to it, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with something that's going on today. So maybe something old was triggered, maybe some old emotion from childhood, old trauma. You talk about trauma, it's probably trauma oriented. And if you believe in past lives, it actually could be something from a past life or familial, ancestral, that's in your energy field. But nonetheless, something could trigger it and you start to feel it, but then your natural tendency would be to want to attach an emotion into it. and then attach a story. So maybe it's like, well, what happened recently that bothered me? And then you say, well, that's it. And then you just start to let that emotion feed on that energy. It's really interesting that I was able to figure that connection out during that time. And like Eckhart Tolle says, you become the witness of this rather than suppressing it.
Yeah.
You go deeper into it, really. And that was the technique that I used, was just not judging it, not attaching an emotion to it or a thought to it, and just letting it be and feeling like the witness of it. That was really empowering and helpful, and just helped me stay stable and grounded.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really proud of you for that.
Thank you. I'm proud of me for that, because if I hadn't had the knowledge, who knows? It would have maybe taken me, made it worse. Maybe more energy would have, gotten.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, like, I'm not at the beginning of part of this process. I've had several iterations of days like today, so that's how I'm able to sit here and have this conversation with you. But just to be clear for your audience,
so you've been to that stage before.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're at a whole different level then.
Yeah, I'm this is considered the Ascension Process, and the more of people that come into my life are like, dude, you're going through the Ascension Process, and I'm like, what the crap does that mean?
What does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean? Please tell.
So this is something that's happening on a very, very, very wide scale, like worldwide basis. All of our consciousness is being upgraded.
Okay, I've been hearing a lot about this. I would love to get your insights in this or on this.
Again, I'm a very, very novice understanding of this stuff. My rudimentary base level, which I guess is kind of where we all are. So maybe this is good.
Yep.
Instead of some advanced meditative. By the way, I don't believe in gurus, I don't believe in masters, and I don't believe in experts. So anybody can give themselves that title, that's fine. That just means you know a little bit more than the rest of us, but that doesn't mean that you figured everything out. So, and I also don't believe in figuring things out. So, because I believe that life is a process. God is taking us on a journey. Every step along the way is important. And figuring it out implies that you have all the answers. So again, if there are no masters, and if we're all students, then there is no figuring things out. You get to experience the how in process. But all that to say, my rudimentary understanding of the Ascension Process is that your consciousness, your thoughts, beliefs, ideas, understandings of yourself, who you are in the world, your place in the universe, and ultimately your power is being leveled up to a new dimension, a new place. And your body is experiencing the changes in all of those different energies. So when you feel extremely exhausted, me today, or incredibly sleepy, or what seems like laziness and being lethargic, it's actually not that. It's your body responding to all the different changes that have been going on inside your mind, inside your heart, and inside your inner self, that it's trying to balance things out. And just like if you were to train for the Olympics, or for, I'm a boxing fan, if you were to train for a championship fight, or any fight for that matter, you're going to go through a rigorous series of weeks, maybe even months. Well, if you're training for the Olympics, years of intense physical work.
Right.
That every single day you are challenging your body in new ways over and over and over again. You're pressing yourself and pushing yourself to new places you've never been pushed to before.
Yep.
And it requires more of your inside saying, okay, I don't believe it. I don't think I can do this, but I'm not going to stop. And that puts a gigantic toll on all of you. This process of leveling up your consciousness is a spiritual version of that physical representation.
So interesting. I mean, all I can speak to experience-wise is that the experience I had that I mentioned last year, where I had the time to go through all that. I was triggered through a breakup. Let's put it that way. A breakup triggered a whole slew of emotions. And once I got over the breakup part, other stuff started happening. So then I realized this isn't related to that. This doesn't feel like that. This is something else. And I would just feel this energy come up, and I could tell it had nothing to do with the breakup. So I was like, what is this? Let's just let this be. So rather than judging it or suppressing it or thinking there was, that this is a bad thing, labeling it bad or judging it in any way, I just let it be and I let it run its course. And I did that just observation of it and put the light of my attention on it and let it run its course. Eventually it subsided, but it was, I mean, if I described it, and I could probably pull out journals of mine. This is why I love journaling, because you can go back to moments in time if you want to, especially if you do it every day and you write down some of the things that happened to you that day that you want to make a note of. I just remember writing down that it felt like I was trying to describe what it felt like, and it felt like a searing pain in my chest, and it was actually in my throat, so maybe like a throat chakra thing. Searing anxiety. It was so intense. It was just like, it felt like a physical thing in my throat. It was so strange. But I just let it go, and it ran its course. Again, didn't label it, didn't judge it, just let it go. Things kept trying to come up and go, well, it's this, it's that, but no, just let it go. And then it would go through periods. It actually happened over months. It felt a different energetically. It felt different. First it was here, then it was here, then so it went through different periods. But when all of it ran its course and I had the time and the space, I wasn't working. This was during COVID. I had sold my business, think something I would have never been able to do before because I wouldn't have had the time. I would have had to pull it together and focus on my distractions, work, whatever. But I didn't have to do that. So what happened was I probably just skyrocketed my progression many, many, many years by those months of, intense focus. But I'll tell you what, when I came out of it, it felt like I was on MDMA. I woke up one morning and I was like, it was such intense ecstasy. Based on nothing. I just woke up that way and I was just like, what is this feeling? And I went outside in my backyard because I felt drawn to nature, and I just sat outside and was like, oh my God, whatever this is, I'm like, it's so good. I'm scared a little bit because it's like, where is this going to last forever? Like, this is an unfamiliar feeling. It was so intense. And so I went and I journaled about it. I was like, I've got to write this down. And it lasted for a good day and a half. And then since then, I've been able to have so much more joy in my life. And I feel like what happened was it literally raised my vibration going through this process.
Yeah.
And my whole I feel cleaned out.
Yeah.
Like lighter.
Yeah. That's been my experience too.
Yeah. Very interesting. I've never talked to anyone about this before. So
I feel very honored to be the first person for you to open up and share this with.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad. I had no idea the conversation was going to go down this path, but
in a way, I really feel that this is all really connected to the idea of true romance, true love, and codependency, because going back to what you've talked about several times, the stories that we attach to our experiences and then the emotions that we attach to our experiences, when we're not taught how from a very young age to take care of ourselves, to love ourselves, or in getting even deeper, if we're not really taught what love actually is, which is my big thing. I'm a student of love, and that's why I teach love. You can't teach something that you don't actively work on learning. But learning what love really is and how it's so much bigger than the things that our culture, our religious institutions, our family practices and genealogy have, and our society, media, everything else has tried to show us what it is, then we end up creating these very broken patterns, and it creates this all of us have a desire to be loved, But when we don't know how to start with us, then the natural inclination is I have to find it from somewhere else. And so it turns into this never-ending scavenger hunt
Right.
that you never actually, you find glimpses of, you find little clues here and there, but the real thing that your heart and soul so desperately wants to experience always seems out of reach. So you're always chasing after it, and it always has to come from somebody else. And as good as it might feel in the moment, when that moment's over, you don't have that longing, or you don't have that long time, like fulfilled, peaceful love experience, because it wasn't love that actually joined with you in the love that you have for yourself. It was this temporary fix for the hole that you feel inside. So my journey, my growth, my understanding, as not only my consciousness has expanded, but my experiences have as well. I understand what true love is, and I'm thankful to be living in that experience. And it is a growth experience, and it is the most beautiful experience I've ever had in my human existence. And what it has required of me and of us is continuously breaking free from these lingering aspects of codependency that still are, because it's kind of like cleaning out your attic. You can clean out your attic and think that you're completely done with stuff, but then go back, 2 weeks later, and there's like a whole giant section of boxes that you didn't see before.
Right.
And behind those boxes are other boxes and dust and junk and all kinds of things. And you're like, where did this come from? I thought I'd done all the work. No, you haven't done all the work. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And your body's been holding on to different things, and your spirit has been holding on to different things, and your mind especially has been holding on to different things. And as you go through, whether it's the ascension process or just changing your consciousness or just healing from heartbreak, like you described, that was my experience 4 years ago when I went through. For me, it was soul crushing. I thought I had a really strong relationship with my now ex-wife, and out of nowhere one day she said, "I don't love you anymore and I want to leave."
So it was out of nowhere. Oh God, that's soul crushing.
Hold on. Being the observer now, I can see that it wasn't out of nowhere, that there were all kinds of signs along the way. But just like I had suppressed my emotions, I chose not to look at the evidence that was always in front of me, because I didn't want to see that. And she had been, in some subtle ways, in some very overt ways, expressing dissatisfaction and unhappiness for a little while. And I had done everything that I knew how to do, but it wasn't making any difference. And the codependent part of me was trying to fix the problem, and not necessarily try to fix her. I gave up. Well, maybe I was trying to fix her, if I'm really honest. Maybe I was trying to fix her. I'll just be totally vulnerable. But I wanted there to be peace in the relationship, and there wasn't. I had started writing a book that I was going to target for businesses. And it's actually the book that I have now that is for people.
I was going to say, I don't remember that book being for business at all.
No, it's really an introduction to self-love from people who have no idea what self-love is.
Which, by the way, I'll let everyone see it. I've got a copy here. It's called Be Solid. Wait, can we see that here? Yes. It's a nice book. It's a beautifully made, good read. I love all these little takeaways you've gotten here too. These are fun.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about the book and that journey.
So I had started, I have a tendency of running away from things that scare me and then running headfirst into them. And I'm still doing that in a way. I got a chest tattoo on Monday.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks. That was an experience that, I got closer to God on that one.
Yeah, I think the chest and like the ribs are supposed to be like super sensitive.
Yeah, the sternum, holy crap, man. Like I started seeing colors. I told my buddy that, and he's like, that sounds like a DMT experience. I'm like, nope, no drugs were involved. But it was quite interesting. Anyhow, when in 2007, I'm a really small frame dude. I'm about 5'7", and I weigh about 125 pounds soaking wet. And I've been like this my whole life. Actually, I used to be a whole lot skinnier. But I spent most of my life being afraid of other people. easy to make friends, but my fear and my insecurity created this codependency of trying to earn other people's friendship and earn their, earn their acceptance and all this stuff. And so I chased friendships, and I think I pushed some people away in that process. But all that to say, I had an experience, and I talk about it in the book, an experience where I didn't cross the street one day because I was afraid of this guy that was standing on the other side of the corner.
Oh, goodness.
Now, I had no reason to really be suspicious of him at all, except I judged him by his appearance, and I was afraid that he might rob me. Now, did I have any reason to believe that? In reality, no. But that deep inside fear was always being afraid that was something that could possibly happen to me at any given point. Well, as I was driving home, I passed a boxing gym. I've always been interested in boxing. I'm a huge fan of the Rocky movies, all of them. My sister and I both are. We're super fans. Anyhow, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of running. I just want to give this a try. So I called the gym that I passed by, and that guy was not the teacher or coach that I wanted. So I called the next number on the list, and I talked to Coach Rivas, and Coach Rivas changed my life. So I spent the next 2.5 years in his gym, growing my body, changing my mind, overcoming all kinds of fears, getting beat up a lot, but also learning these very, very core principles that have revolutionized the way that I live my life. And I'm using them in my spiritual journey now in ways that I never foresaw coming. But I had started writing a book about these principles, and I was going to apply it to business. And then when I experienced heartbreak and divorce, my publisher, is a good friend of mine, said, why don't you take what you've been writing about and apply it to your life instead of applying it to your business? And so that put me on this different journey of learning really what self-love is. And so part of that began sitting right here in the chair that I'm sitting in right now, about 4.5 years ago. I had a memory of my wedding day, and at the time that was my favorite memory. And I immediately felt all this joy and happiness until it suddenly became dark and clouded, and this part of me was like, that is not your life anymore.
Right.
You don't have that relationship. You don't have that love anymore. This is now a tragedy. And so I fell into my floor crying and sobbing my eyes out because I felt just this immense amount of tormented sadness. And in that moment, this is where my journey began, really. In that moment, I heard the still small voice inside of me say, you don't know how to love yourself. And that is the cause of all of your problems.
Wow.
So that began my journey into understanding what codependency is.
Right.
And realizing that I had been extremely codependent my entire life. I had brought that codependency into my marriage. I had relied on my former partner's love or acceptance or approval of me for me to feel good about myself at any given point in time.
I was going to ask you, is that your definition of codependency, is relying on, like, how would you define codependency?
Well, codependency is it's a dependent need that you have on someone or something else for you to feel worthy, valuable, and whole. And the codependent part is the person that you have that need with, they also have that need.
Right.
And they need you to give them the same thing in return, but you don't have a conversation about this. You believe that your romance or your friendship or your love or whatever it is this mutual thing, and that you're always going to be pouring into each other at all times, and it's always going to feel really happy and really awesome until you get to these moments where it doesn't. And then because they were the source of happiness and love and bliss, and now they're now the reason why this whole thing sucks. And so then it's how wars get started in nations, but it's how wars get started in relationships, because instead of being joined together and partnered together, you suddenly are turned against each other and are working against each other. And that's why codependency is not true love.
Right.
Because true love is always working for the improvement of self and the growth of the other person in harmony with them, not as a way to try to fix their problems.
But it's two individuals who come together whole, or their goal is to be whole independently, and yet it's supporting each other on their journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And recognizing your own individual weaknesses or traumas or triggers, and talking about that openly so that there's an open communication about what's going on. And there's not like, you're not hiding yourself away out of fear that, if it, because that's another, I think, aspect of codependency, when you hide parts of yourself out of fear that if they see this, they won't love me anymore, or they
Right.
won't or they won't even like me anymore.
Right.
And so then you put on all these masks to try to cover up who you really are, but you can't wear a mask forever. Those
Right.
masks start to come off. And as they start to come off and there's parts of you that start to be revealed, that you're like, I didn't know this person was like this. I didn't know this person was like this.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, you're actually seeing more of their real self and they're seeing more of your real self. And can you still love and accept them as they are instead of trying to change them? Neville Goddard teaches that the only person to change is yourself.
Right.
Because your understanding, and Wayne Dyer teaches this too, your relationship with anybody else in the world is not with the other person, it's with your mind.
Yourself. Absolutely. I mean, you have to first have that deep relationship with yourself. That is number one, because that's really what everything stems from.
Well, so my journey and what I wrote about in my book is about not just getting on solid ground, but getting solid in who you are and knowing who you are and loving who you are and loving yourself, especially when you're in a place where you don't feel good, loving yourself exactly as you are, learning how to be your own best friend. And this is something that I teach, and I've got courses and programs and other stuff. So learning how to be your own best friend and also learning how to be your own true love. Because if you are thinking that complete harmony of love that you so naturally and deeply want to experience is found in another person, again, that goes back to the codependent thing. You're going to chase after that versus finding someone who is actually a match for you. And when you meet your match, you just know.
You've met your match.
I know I've met my match. When you know, in places like, in your mind, in your heart, and in your soul, and there's an excitement that happens, but that person is not my fulfillment. That person doesn't complete me. I complete me. And coming from a place of completion, and her coming from a place of completion, makes the relationship a solid relationship. And that's actually where the true love stuff happens. And we can say that it's the fairy tale love at first sight. You see someone, and I had kind of that experience the first time I saw her in person. But like,
oh, you did?
I had kind of one of my favorite books is The Alchemist.
I love that book.
When I got to page 95, and I remember exactly where it is because that page has got underlines and asterisks and highlights and all kinds of stuff. But I wrote in the column, I want to have this experience, and I had a version of that happen. I won't get into the details, but yeah, like I had a version of that. But like every step along the way has been this constant growth journey, and we have been in this growth process together, and it's been a very beautiful, wonderful experience. It's been difficult at times, yes, but it's been overall a very loving, wonderful, beautiful experience. And that's what love is. Love goes through the journey with you.
Right.
Love goes through the journey with you at your lowest points and at your highest points, and embraces and accepts you along the way. Doesn't try to change you, doesn't tell you what to do or how to do something differently necessarily, unless maybe you ask for help in that way. But a lot of it is just being present and being the safe space and being, yes, the best friend, but also being the one that says, I'm here. And even if I can't be here in the physical sense, all of my energy that I'm sending your way is nothing but love and peace and joy, because that's what I want for you. And also on this subject, and talking about codependency, this is a metaphor that has totally revolutionized the way that I understand myself and the way that I understand relationships, especially with a particular person. Fortunately, I do have cups. Okay, so I'm very metaphoric in the way that I communicate. Okay, so most of us imagine that, and I'll try to get this on the screen. Most of us imagine that our heart is a cup. Maybe it's a wine glass, maybe it's a bigger cup, maybe it's like Gatorade bottle, whatever. But we imagine that our heart is this cup, and what we do is this is what culture and society and other people have modeled for us and trained us into believing, that it's our job to fill up our cup close to the top, right around here, and then go pour love into other people. And then after we pour love into other people, we can do this, and they will pour love back into us.
Ah, yes.
Okay. So big-hearted people that are naturally overgivers are not just tipping kind of the cup out. They're dumping gigantic chunks, or what, not chunks. You don't have chunks in a cup. Gigantic portions of love into other people, and then getting depleted way down
Right.
here, and then feeling so desperate and so needy and so like, when will somebody please give me what I've given back out? Because like I don't have anything left.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I lived decades operating from that mentality.
Yeah.
Here's what I've come to know to be true. And this is the way that real love works. This is the way true love works. And this is the way God's love works, which God lives inside of each and every one of us. It doesn't matter what your religion or creed
That's
is.
right.
God lives inside of you. All you have to do to connect with God is say, here I am. But it's our job and it's our responsibility to fill up our own cup.
Right.
Fill up our own cup. But here's the thing. This is the big revolutionary thing. Love, God's love, divine love, is not scarce. It's not in limited quantity.
No.
It's in abundance. When
That's right.
When you think of abundance, what do you think of? I have two thoughts. One, the ocean, and two, Niagara Falls. Okay? Niagara Falls has been flowing for I don't know how long, maybe all time, and it hasn't run out of water yet.
Unlimited.
Unlimited quantity. So that's what God's love is. It is our responsibility to not fill our cup up to the top so then we can go pour into other people. It's our responsibility to fill it up and then to overflow.
That's right.
And to constantly be overflowing. And what we do is we give from the overflow. The contents of the cup is just for you.
That's right. Oh, God, that's so well said, D. Yes. Yes. I talk about this same thing. I use the analogy of a power container instead. Same exact thing. We need to serve from the overflow. It is not selfish. It is necessary. It's just such a much better way to give. And everyone else will be more grateful when you do that, because you bring in that's your power. You're filling up also like this power container, and that you're just charged. You're on a higher vibration. You're giving with so much more positive energy, and you're just giving from a much better place. But you have to fill yourself up. It's so necessary. And yet all of society, every culture teaches the opposite.
Well, otherwise, we're always going to be giving from a place of need.
Right.
We're always going to be giving from a place of lack, and we're always going to be operating from a place of need and lack, because the more I give to you, the less I have for myself. Or even if you're not even aware of there being anything for yourself, the less love you feel inside, the less peace you feel inside, the less happiness, joy, all the other things.
So how do you fill up? I've got my methods for filling up that are based on self-love principles that I talk about in my book, but I would love to know how you recharge or fill that up.
I'm very big on simplicity. All of my courses, all of my articles, everything that I do, every teaching, speech, whatever. If it's not simple and it takes a lot of steps, or the steps are kind of complicated, our natural mentality is to go, good luck for those people. And we check ourselves out. So I'm very big on simplicity. Meditation is a gigantic tool and a gigantic resource. It's not complicated. Easiest way to meditate, just sit still and breathe. But then I'm just breathing. But what do I do with all the thoughts? Have the thoughts. Who cares? Just sit still. Put your phone in another room. Sit in a place where there's no electronics. Go into a quiet place. Go for a walk. I like to do this in the mornings. Go for a walk and sit in nature. And there might be birds chirping all over the place. There might be squirrels running around all over the place. There might be dogs barking all over the place. That's fine. It's nature. There might be little kids running around. Who cares? It's life that's taking place. And you sitting in the presence of life and in the tranquility of nature not only grounds you, but it also harmonizes yourself with peace if you will allow it.
Right.
And if you can just sit still, close your eyes or not, doesn't really matter, but just sit there and take breaths that you are conscious of breathing in. So simple meditation. And for me to get into the overflow state, I do two things. I close my eyes, I imagine the waterfall, and I imagine sitting underneath the waterfall. And as I'm sitting underneath the waterfall, I just ask God, who lives inside of me, fill me up. And don't just stop. Fill me up to overflow. And then after I'm overflowing, I want you to spring up within me a wellspring that's even underneath the ground, springing up with more water, more love, more light, so that I've got it coming from both sides. That gets me into an energetic place because I can visualize it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine what it would feel like to not only be surrounded by water coming down on top of me, but coming up through me. And I can imagine the feeling of that much water. I can hear the sounds of this overflow, this pour down. I can feel the tranquility and the peace that's happening all around. And I can, since I'm in nature, especially if I do this outside, I can imagine being in nature and hearing birds chirping and seeing green and all kinds of other stuff around me. It gets me into that energetic place. And then I'm good for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And
Simple.
it also doesn't take a whole lot of time.
Right.
If you spend even just 2 minutes in a place where you're consciously imagining and consciously allowing yourself to be filled up with love, just 2 minutes. Now, I highly advise you go for 5 or 10 minutes. And as you do this, it's just like training for the Olympics or anything else. It requires practice every single day.
Right.
And it also requires consistency and repetition.
Yep.
What we commit ourselves to, we do over and over again.
Right. Have to make it a priority.
So if you want to operate from overflow, and this is not just for love, it's also for financial abundance, it's for career success, it's for happiness and harmony in your relationships with other people, it's for your own personal well-being and fulfillment. It's for everything. Just taking loving energy. When I say love, I'm talking about loving energy. Taking loving energy and it being in overflow. Like I'm overflowing right now. I don't have to do any work for it. It's just a part of the process. But I've been doing this simple little meditative practice every day for, I don't know, months and months and months and months and months.
So it's very different though than chasing a Lamborghini, trying to, have some type of a material thing, thinking this happiness is in an object outside of yourself. And that is why we hear time and time again that, the pursuit of these external things, it'll never make you happy. You hear that all the time, but the truth is it can't make you happy. An external object cannot make you happy. Happiness comes from within. It's not based on objects.
So I think external objects can make you feel a level of happiness. But if we want to, so I'm very big on definition of terms. I can say a word that means something to me. You can say the same word. It might mean something completely different to you. For instance, and well, actually, I don't want to take too much of a tangent. The idea of happiness is like lasting joy and bliss. And for me, this is my idea of happiness: lasting joy and bliss and satisfaction and excitement and just an overwhelming ecstasy of life.
Yep.
Happiness. Okay.
For no reason. Just being in a state of happiness.
Well, yeah, for me, reason or no reason, it's this overwhelming feeling of just like life could never be better than this moment. I believe that if somebody, if I were to go get a Lamborghini, I would feel different levels of that for different moments. But after I got home, what am I going to do? Am I going to look at, which is not to say that I would want to have a Lamborghini. That'd be awesome. But if I attach happiness and my understanding of happiness to this other thing, where unless I'm sitting in that car or driving down the street or trying to show off for other people, or other people are saying like, oh my God, you're driving a Lamborghini. How did that happen? Like, unless that's happening, then I don't feel happy. Then I haven't actually achieved happiness. I've achieved a codependent connection with this external thing.
That's right. So for me, as speaking from a female perspective, but you know what? I have a feeling you can relate as well. Being the giver that you are naturally, and the lover of love, that, it's more complex, but each step is very simple in that it comes down to how you feel. So for example, if I don't say no when that's what I really feel like saying, and I say, yes, because I'm trying to people please, which
Mm.
is I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Ditto.
It's very hard because it's so deep in my programming, but
Mm.
it really works against my self-love game. Um, if I find myself saying yes, I just feel it depletes me. It drains me. I can feel it in my energy. Yeah, that's that giving. It's that pouring that's happening.
Well, you're betraying yourself too.
That's right. I'm betraying myself. I'm not being true to myself. And so when I make that bold step to say, no, I don't feel like doing that today. I'm not going to do it. going to have to cancel because I'm choosing me right now. That should always be, without question, your number one choice. Not to be a douche about it, but putting yourself first just means that you are your own best friend. You are your own parent. You are your own lover.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your lover might say to you, Jenna, why are you doing that today? You need to not, you don't feel like it. Don't do it. Like, you need to be that for yourself. So that's one of my ways of filling up is, I get a charge when I choose myself. It makes me feel good about me. It makes me feel love for me. I feel a love for me when I do that. Other ways might be setting a boundary, which kind of falls in the same mindset, really. It's, let's say I'm out somewhere, let's say I'm at a bar, I'm single, somebody's hitting on me, and I know that person, and I don't want to make them feel bad. So to my own discomfort, I don't let them know how uncomfortable they're making me feel, and putting my foot down and saying, knock it off. Again, anytime I tune into my energy, though, and that's my signal is, if I'm feeling a little icky, just like, then that's my signal to be like, Jenna, you need to, you're being drained right now. You need to fill back up. And by standing up for yourself, you empower yourself, and it's that charge, and you're like, yeah, I'm proud of myself for doing that. Good job. And that's another thing I do. It's a conscious practice of mine that I've been working on only in the past couple of years. It's come into my consciousness, but I consciously pat myself on the back.
Awesome.
It actually is a game changer. Game changer. Little things like, hey, you know what? I had a task list today. I got every single little thing on my task list done. I could be doing that every single day going, good job, Jenna. Even just some simple little thing. Like today, I had a receipt that I was going to try and have an Airbnb rental, and somebody did some damage and I had to get a replacement, and I could say, meh, it's insignificant enough. I'll just absorb the cost. But I was like, no, I have a policy. Stick with my policy. Let's get that done. I got it done. It was a simple little thing that I could have procrastinated on, but then it would have bothered me. And I got it done, and I was like, hey, good job. Every little time I do that, it just keeps me feeling like getting more done, and I feel empowered, and I'm proud of myself, instead of going down another path, which is, oh, you didn't do that today. And then you just start to, feel kind of not happy with yourself and not proud of yourself. And even, so I know you like the boxing metaphors, and the Olympics, and for me, tennis is a big one. And I noticed that if I pat myself on the back for small things, just getting a point, good job. Every time I do that, I actually play better. And if I don't do that, I'll find myself going the other way, which is, dang it, you really sucked on that serve.
So self-talk is such a valuable thing.
Yeah.
And all of us are talking to ourselves all the time. It's not a matter of like, oh, I hope nobody saw me talking to myself. No, you're always talking to yourself, and you have been. One of the simple practice, one of the things I do is when primarily in the bathroom, because that's where the mirror is. When I see myself in the mirror, I talk to myself like, not like a pep talk necessarily, but I tell myself exactly how I feel about me, as a way to look myself in the eye and say, like, dude, you're badass.
Nice.
Do you realize how cool you are? And sorry, I don't know if I can use F words.
That's okay. Yeah. You're good.
Dead sexy.
I love it. Yeah.
And just I praise myself because I've spent so many years telling myself just such degrading, terrible things.
The things we tell ourselves about
And
ourselves. Oh,
when I realized that, okay, part of my codependent need of my former codependent need in seeking after people's compliments and acceptance and approval, I was really chasing people's praise, and I felt
yeah.
such validation from that
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't giving it to me.
Right.
And we have to be our own source for validation
We
and
do.
acceptance. And the love of my life writes love notes to herself, and I think it's such a beautiful thing.
That's so
And
cool.
there's times where I'll write little letters to myself, then I'll just kind of place them in books or other different things, and then I'll find it, months later and be like reading this note from my past self, just totally in awe and gratitude and thankfulness and appreciation for who I am and the journey that I've been on, and for not giving up on me. And that's you being your own best friend. Because if you got a letter from your best friend, or you found an old letter from your best friend and you're reading through it and you're like, oh, this is such a sweet letter. I really love and appreciate this person for seeing me.
God, yes. Yes. But you can do it for yourself all the time. And nobody really talks about that. But yet all of us suffer from this horrible, mean inner critic.
Mm-hmm. And the way, so, two things for me, dealing with my inner critic, who sounded like a drill sergeant from like the movie, what was that movie from Vietnam era? Vincent D'Onofrio, Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
So my inner critic has sounded like Lee Ermey's drill sergeant in that. Not only berating, but like coming up with the most like creative insults.
Oh, goodness.
But like antagonistic to the core. Two things that I've done to just address my inner critic is, you know what, man, I love you.
That's good.
So one of the things I teach in I've got a program built around my book that's all about self-love and understanding what love is, and going through a process of growing in kindness. And on this subject, kindness is not the same thing as niceness. I've got a lot of writing on that if anybody wants to read about it. But
where can they find it, by the way?
My website, my blog, dgrantsmith.com. It's also where you can see my courses and programs and books and all that other stuff.
Okay.
And I've got a bunch of resources all bundled together for $7, the Be Solid book included. And a self-love course, and a confidence building course, and a reshaping your beliefs ebook that's not available anywhere else. That's at besolidbook.com.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
This one simple phrase, use it on yourself all the time. Once you use it on yourself all the time, it will become natural for you to use it with other people, especially when you experience disappointment or anything close to sadness or what feels like rejection or whatever. It's okay. I love you. And just repeat that to yourself over and over again. So when my inner drill sergeant, my inner critic kicks into high gear, and for instance, to do things, I had a list of things I was going to do today. Haven't started on it. I don't think I'm going to, because of the place I'm in energetically. I'm just accepting myself as I am. But the inner critic has tried to come in and be like, dude, like, you're never going to get where you want to go if you keep, not doing the stuff you say you're going to do. I have fulfilled all of the commitments to other people that I have made today.
Yeah, you're here today. You could have said no and you showed up.
So to do things do not define my success or anything. And it's okay. I love you.
I like that.
And it's okay. I love you. Just like, and here's the thing. This goes to relationships as well. And again, all of the relationships you have are in your mind as well. Any relationship you have with other people, your ideas, your interpretations, the stories that you create about what's actually going on, that's all inside of you.
That's so true.
So it's okay. I love you. Repeating that over and over again. And by the way, this is grace, and grace is unconditional love. That's the definition. Okay. Unconditional love. It's okay. I love you is practicing unconditional love, and you go with yourself first. So instead of rejecting and being mad at your inner critic, which I've done a ton of that, I've done a ton of arguing with him and telling him that he's wrong and he needs to shut the hell up and blah, 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 blah. All that stuff just exacerbates the issue.
That's right.
But if Gay Hendricks, who is a fantastic teacher and author of several great books, How to Love Yourself, I think, is one of them, and The Big Leap is another one. But he teaches you send love to everything.
Yeah.
And so sending love to your inner critic is one of the ways that your inner critic stops talking with you, because it doesn't have to say anything anymore.
I've noticed that the more I've made a conscious effort to embrace I call her inner warrior goddess, my inner cheerleader, the less the inner critic even starts to come up anymore.
So
I'm sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, sorry, you were talking.
No, it's just it rarely makes an appearance. It's learned, and that used to be the biggest voice in my head, was that mean inner critic. But it's not. It takes practice. You actually can get over it. You have to change your habits. That's all.
So for me, my inner voice is, I guess, my spirit animal. That's something I never saw myself as, is a lion. So that's what's right here right now.
Nice.
I had to go through a journey and it was a very spiritual journey, and it was a very, at times, scary experience. But I was so afraid of, you talked about chakras earlier. I was so afraid of speaking from my voice and telling my story, because I was afraid of what other people were going to think about me, or what they were going to say about me, or that if I spoke my truth and that did anything to maybe make them look bad or not look good, that they would be angry at me, and then they would come and attack me, or say a bunch of terrible things about me or whatever. And I was so afraid of actually vocalizing my own feelings. So I was betraying myself all the time.
Always, yeah.
And the lion doesn't ask anybody's permission to roar. Also, the lion doesn't respond to jackals. A lion can walk through a prairie or a field or whatever, and there be all kinds of other animals, like even animals that might want to, if I'm guessing if it's a bunch of jackals or hyenas or something like that around it or whatever, might feel like threatened and, predatory or whatever, and like be barking and antagonistic, whatever. Lion doesn't give a crap. Lion's like, you can't touch me, dude. I'm a freaking lion.
So it's so interesting that you're calling this part of you your inner lion. Like I said, I call mine my inner warrior goddess, but same thing. When you picture, a warrior, you think of somebody who isn't going to take shit, who's fearless and stands, fights for you. But the goddess side, gives it some grace and, is the more feminine energy. So, but it helps to have that projection, if you will.
I think it helps to have that visual,
Yeah,
that visual representation, because it, from a spiritual, emotional, psychological, and even mental side, and maybe even a physical side, being able to say that, okay, I have a deeper understanding of what it means for me to be strong and what that looks like, especially if you've never seen yourself as a strong person.
right.
By having a visual representation of what that is, and then you seeing that as a personification or a representation of who you really are.
That's right.
So for me, as a skinny, small frame dude, to imagine myself as a lion has been a very empowering thing. And I am not a threatening person at all. I'm not trying to start crap with anybody, or I'm into boxing, but that doesn't mean I want to. I'm not somebody that fights other people. That's not how I deal with anything. But like, things can have different iterations or different interpretations by different people, but that's their story.
Right.
For my story, for me to have, like, when I like to watch The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh God, I haven't seen that in forever.
And Prince Caspian too. That's actually a really good movie, because there's a way that when Aslan shows up in certain times, you think that he's going to do certain things that he doesn't do, because actually his strength is empowering those children to believe in their true self, and to empower and to own their own power. And he kind of stands in the background in a way as support, but he doesn't run up to the front and fight all the battles, win all the wars, do all the fighting and stuff. It's not in I think part of our religious programming, We expect God to show up in our lives and solve all of our problems and make everything just magically disappear and go away. Instead,
Totally.
God is like, I am empowering you and loving you,
That's
and I
right.
want you to believe in the God force that's actually inside of you for you to
Inside of
do this
you.
stuff too.
Absolutely. No, I love that comparison. I just love that you have the lion, I've got the inner warrior goddess, but it's helpful to have that visual. I would like to have the audience here, because we talked the last time we talked, you talked about your analogy about, it reminds me of the story of Superman
Mm.
and Lois Lane. Oh my God, that was so
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to wrap it up here soon, but
I have all the time in the world, so we can talk as much as you want to. But and you can.
I would love to get that story in, though, if you don't mind, just because it
Totally.
correlates with where we're
Well,
at right now in the
I
conversation.
was just gonna say, I have watched some. You and I talked about watching some romantic comedies to be able to point out some places where we see like codependence in a. And I've watched some movies where I'm like, Jesus, what is this? Anyhow, Superman and Lois Lane is. I grew up watching the Christopher Reeve version of Superman with
Okay.
Margot Kidder. And for the longest time, Christopher Reeve was my Superman. And I still think, watching him on screen, he's got just such charisma and an interesting poise to him. I'm a huge fan of Henry Cavill or Cavill. I'm not sure how to say his name. That dude is. I'm a straight arrow heterosexual man, but he is a gorgeous human being. That British accent's pretty awesome too. Anyhow, in both of those iterations, there is an extreme codependent relationship that Superman has with Lois and that Lois has with Superman, because, especially in the Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder versions, she throws herself into these crazy, dangerous, life-threatening situations. At sometimes she does so blindly, chasing the story, which you want to talk about codependency, chasing a story, geez.
Yeah.
But also, once she builds her relationship with Superman, it's almost like this permanent, not get out of jail free card, but permanent save my ass from everything that could possibly ever happen to me card. And she is completely dependent upon him just making sure she gets home at night. And Superman and his codependent need for her will stop everything. And like Superman 2, for instance, she goes into Paris to try to get the story on this group of terrorists that have hijacked the Eiffel Tower and have a bomb attached to it. Well, she blindly gets stuck under the elevator trying to get in the scoop or whatever. Well, Superman flies halfway across the world in a matter of minutes, which is interesting because in the first movie, he flew around the world so fast that he reversed time, but that's a different story. I pay attention to details. But he flies across the world. It takes him a couple minutes, but he flies up, rescues her from the undercarriage of the elevator, and flies the bomb-carrying elevator out into space and throws it and creates the whole dynamic for the rest of the film. But that whole thing is still centered around, and Superman 2 also, he gives up all of his powers and his calling to be a beacon of light to humanity, because that's what it's going to take for him to be in love with Lois.
Oh goodness.
Go back and watch the movie. There's countless examples of codependency. I watched that with the love of my life, and she's like, I don't want to have that relationship. And I said, neither do I. I'm very much into Superman. I believe I am Superman, but I'm as a beacon of hope and of light. But codependency, no, not my. I've released the savior complex. I'm not interested in saving anybody. It's our job to save ourselves and to be empowered in transforming our own lives and making the changes in our own lives for us to be whole and complete. It's not somebody else that comes in and rescues you and is your knight in shining armor savior, whatever.
Yes.
We could take this same sort of codependent thing and take it over to, I think it's Batman v Superman, 2016. Lois goes into dangerous territory, gets captured by other terrorists, has a gun held to her head, and Superman shows up and basically winks at the guy before he blows him through a wall before he can pull the trigger. All of that stuff, yes, it's dynamic hero rescuing the love of his life, but she willingly put herself in danger and in harm's way. And ultimately, one of the great things about that film is it shows the consequences of such decision making from a global standpoint, because yes, he saved her life, but the ramifications of the village that was experienced because he decided to break international, laws and all kinds of stuff was exponential. So all this to say, I'm actually, maybe this is a good idea for us to do and a good way to challenge your viewers and your listeners. I'm a superhero nerd. Let's spend some time collectively. I'm open to having conversations with all of you guys about this. Let's watch some superhero movies if you're open to it. And other films, looking for, is there a depiction of a truly healthy, solid, whole relationship taking place here?
Love that challenge.
Because I want to know what those films are. I want to watch them.
The ones that are truly healthy.
The ones that are truly healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one I can say, this is one of my favorite movies. It is a difficult film to watch. It's only on Amazon Prime. There are all kinds of iterations and examples inside the film of broken relationships. But when you get down to the final relationship that gets depicted, it's truly a loving, whole relationship with two people that have experienced incredible trauma in their life. But also you see how love actually brought their stories together. And the movie is called Life Itself.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but you know what? I'm going to write this down. It's a must-see. It's on Amazon Prime, you say?
Amazon Prime. It's got Oscar Isaac, Antonio Banderas, and there's a couple other, Olivia Wilde, maybe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. That's a really good challenge, because this is what's programming us. I mean, how can we be blamed for trying to find love the way that it's shown to us?
On that subject, one of the things you and I talked about last time, and I just want to make a very brief note here. For your level of consciousness, all of our friends that are watching this, for your level of consciousness and your level of upgrading and your level of wholeness and solidarity in yourself and self-love, be very aware of what you're putting into your system by what you watch. Now, I'm not saying that you take this like Amish Puritan road of not watching any movies or not watching any movies that have violence or movies that have dysfunction, but be aware of the dynamics of what you're watching on screen when you're watching it, so that you are not absorbing that as this is the story that I want to live.
Right.
Case in point, I've been rewatching Friends from the 90s.
Oh, fun.
Okay. Great TV show. I used to watch it with my family when I was growing up. We would laugh and have a good time. And I think every guy probably wanted to date Rachel. I wanted to go out with Monica. I had a thing for Courtney Cox. Anyhow, but each of these characters, all 6 of them, are incredibly dysfunctional in all of their relationships. Chandler and apparently Matt not Broderick.
LeBlanc?
No, Matt LeBlanc was Joey. Matthew, what's his name?
Perry.
Matthew Perry has had some very serious emotional issues, and I think he's probably also had some very serious traumatic experiences. But he's a very needy person who needs you to laugh at all of his jokes. He doesn't take other things seriously. And talking about his character as Chandler in the show, and I just watched an episode last night where I was just in awareness mode, but he has faced the fact that I'm in season 3, and he's dating the oh my god, what's her name? Janice. He's dating Janice.
Okay.
All right. Well, Janice is in the process of getting divorced, but she's also seeing Chandler, and she's been caught kissing her soon-to-be ex-husband, and he confronts her about that, and she can't choose between her ex-husband and him. So he gets Joey's advice, and Joey actually gives really good advice. He says they have a family together. I wouldn't want to be the person that splits that family up. So if she's having a hard time choosing, I would bow out if I were you. And so Chandler does, for a moment, he does a healthy thing, and he sits her down and says, look, I don't want to be the person that breaks up your family. If you're still in love with your ex-husband, work on that marriage, do the right thing, keep your family together. And she's like, oh my God, you're so sweet. You're so right. Blah, 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 blah. Well, as she's making the decision to go in this other direction, his insane neediness and wanting her kicks into high gear, and he's like holding onto her leg, and he's like, no, run away with me. Let's go off together and like forget everything. Everything I said was totally wrong. And like it actually ignites the desperation in him to be single.
Oh.
So I'm saying all of this to say that I grew up watching Friends as a teenager. That was a model and representation of
so true.
what it means to be in a dating relationship or have anything. When I talk about super dysfunctional stuff, everything Ross and Rachel is entirely dysfunctional. Okay. But that became this model and this pattern. Everyone wants to be either Ross and Rachel. They want to be lobsters, whatever. I don't want that. I want healthy, functional, balanced, growing, truly loving, whole, peaceful, solid relationship.
Love it. That's your thing. Be solid. I love the name of the book. It's so you, and that's the theme of you, and that's carried over into all the other work that you're doing. And it's amazing. Thank you for sharing this with us today, and your presence, and for coming on despite the mode that you're in today. I so admire your bravery. And I don't think I could have had a better conversation with you. Thank you for just braving through that. And I think we covered a lot of really great ground here. And I'm really excited. I hope people take you up on the challenge for the movie, television show, whatever it is. Like, let's figure out which is really healthy, guys. Can we do it? Can we do it?
So my website has got all my contact information. I would love, and I'll give you my email address right now. It's dgrant@dgrantsmith.com. Please include the D in there. That is a part of my name. But after watching us have this conversation, any feedback, any insight, anything you want to add to the conversation, please reach out to me. I'd love to have the conversation. I'm very much about relationships. That's the central piece of everything that I do. On that subject, Jenna, thank you for creating this space, not just for me, but for all of us to sit here and to grow and to learn. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to just be vulnerable and be real. Thank you for allowing me to go so much longer than maybe we had originally planned on going, and for not shushing any of my tangents or rabbit chasing. I appreciate you.
You're so kind, D. Grant. It was my pleasure, and the pleasure really was all mine. And thank you for allowing me the same space to be vulnerable. It was definitely a common situation. So thank you. I think it was just a beautiful conversation to have. One that I cannot say I've ever had with anyone, truly unique. So thank you for that. D. Grant, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was so great to have this conversation with you. Loved it so, so much. And if you want to get that package that D talked about his book package, you can find it at besolidbook.com. Again, besolidbook.com. And what you're going to get is right away a free video on how to break free from codependency. But part of the $7 package that he mentioned, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff like confidence building checklist and worksheet, reshaping beliefs, empower yourself to greatness ebook. You'll also get the expanded Be Solid audiobook with bonus chapters that's not been previously released. You'll get knockout powered confidence and confidence building 101 online course. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get the Be Solid Self-Love Essentials course. Wow, that is a whole heck of a lot for $7. If you enjoyed the show today, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for future episodes of the show. And if we're not connected on social media, let's connect. I'm super active on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find me at Jenna Banks .0. Same thing on TikTok. You'll find me at Jenna Banks .0. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Jenna Banks. And please do visit my website and sign up for my newsletter. I do share some very helpful information on there, and I do not spam, so no worries there. My website is jenna-banks.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope to see you next time. And remember, your love is your power.